What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Lear, and today we are going to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. That's right. After 50 years, they were like, hey, we're going to do what Halloween did, and we're not going to deviate unless it's to make it worse. Let's do the review. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 comes out 48 years. I know I said 50 just a second ago, but logistically it's 48 years. It came out in 1974. So 48 years later, they make this movie. And this movie takes place in 2022. Keep those two things in mind for something I've got to talk about later. But let's just talk about the synopsis of this movie first. So 4 kids come to town and they're like, hey, we're going to buy this town. We're going to sell it to our investor influencer friends who are also young and also want to make money and also want to live in a community where it's just us. It's going to be like a utopia for people like us, people who need to get away from the rest of the world. And of course, immediately they run into a problem because one of the buildings is owned by the mother of Leatherface. Now, that's an issue I have because I don't ever remember them talking about a mother for Leatherface. I mean, I guess he technically had to have a mother somewhere, but the crazy person was his dad in Texas Chainsaw. I guess maybe, down the line, it's just, that was his mom. Or maybe it's just someone who decided, hey, I'm going to take this guy in as his mom. But after the events of the first movie, I don't know, because they don't explain that. They're just like, oh, I'm his mother. And it's like clearly a 20-year-old woman with like just a shit ton of makeup. Like they couldn't find one old lady, whatever. So they tell this old lady, hey, you got to get out. And then she's like, no, I got the title upstairs. And then the sheriff comes in, he's like, nah, hell, I told you got to leave. So the 2 sheriffs grab her. And as they grab her, she starts to convulse and like have some plot furthering something because she starts to throw up and they're like, it was heart failure. Do you throw up with heart failure? Maybe, I don't know. But that's what happens. So Leatherface runs downstairs without his mask and no one thinks this is weird, grabs his mom, jumps into the back of an ambulance with her and they take off. Now, while they're in the ambulance, she dies. And so he's like, I'll go back to being a murderous Leatherface. I guess that's what goes through his mind because then he starts killing everybody. So the ambulance crashes, Leatherface cuts his mother's face off, lifts it up to the sun, which is a pretty cool shot we'll talk about later, puts it on and becomes Leatherface and heads back towards the town. Now, at that point, if you're thinking, okay, well, that's actually not a terrible setup, maybe it'll be really good. You'd be wrong, because that's what I thought, and I was wrong. The only other character in this movie of note before we get into likes and dislikes is the last survivor from the original Texas Chainsaw. And that's why I was saying when they tried to be Halloween 2018, they really tried to be Halloween 2018 because they went and found the original actress and brought her back. Unlike Jamie Lee Curtis, she hasn't aged as well, and she actually looks like she's in her 60s or 70s. That's the thing, too. She's got to be in like her 70s because she was at least 16 to 20 in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that came out 48 years ago. And this is supposed to take place in 2022. So this lady clearly is like 60 to 70 years old, somewhere in there, and she's had all this time to prep. Now, when Jamie Lee did it in Halloween 2018, when Michael Myers finally came home, he went into the basement. That was over for him. She had a trap, she had a plan, she blew the house up, and it didn't really work out. But in this movie, her whole plan after 50 years was to just be a Texas Ranger and have a shotgun. Texas Ranger, shotgun, you're good to go. Boom, let's go get them. That was her plan. That was it. I don't completely hate this movie because there's a few things that I actually really liked, and we're getting into those right now because I don't want to spoil any of this movie for you guys any more than I already have. Let's jump into the things I like and dislike. First thing I like, guys, I really love some of the imagery in this movie. Like at one point, Leatherface does the spin in the street with the Texas Chainsaw. And that's cool because that's like right from the original movie. And while I know it's not the original actor, they just did it so well. I really like that. Also, I touched on it briefly earlier, but when he has his mother's face and he lifts it up to the sun and then puts it on, it's terrifying, but that imagery is great. But that leads me to my first dislike, and that is I'm pretty sure the director or the team behind this had a lot of really cool images and shots and thoughts, and they were like, okay, we're gonna basically steal the plot from Halloween 2018. We've got these cool images. The execution will be flawless. It's not anywhere near that. I lied. There is one more thing that I like about this movie, and it's a scene on a bus. There's a very blue light in that bus, lots of influencers, and Leatherface. I'll just leave it at that, but that scene ruled. That was probably the best scene in the entire movie. But outside of those things, there's not really much to like about this movie because the dialogue is bad, the acting is bad, the story for each individual character is either lackluster, not enough. There's one character that has a little bit of a backstory and you're like, wow, I understand why she's a survivor, but like everybody else in this movie, there's just no motivation for them, and more importantly, there's no motivation for you as the fan to care about them enough to say, oh, I hope they get away from Leatherface. Like, no, at a certain point, I yelled at the TV and I said, I hope you die. Like, my next door neighbors probably didn't like that, but yeah, I did. I said, I hope you die. Because it was horrible. It was just, they were making dumb decisions. Like, they had multiple opportunities to get away, like serious opportunities to get away. At one point, they're on a bus ready to leave, and the driver's like, I'm gonna go check out that sound. What? No, what? Why? No, don't do that at all. And all of that leads up to the things that I probably dislike the most from this movie, and that is the continuation problem. And that is what boggled my mind the whole time. Here's what I'm talking about. Leatherface was at least 30 to 40 years old in the original Leatherface movie. It's 48 years later. So Leatherface is in his 80s or 90s, and he's still running around like he was in the first movie, like he didn't age. There's nothing supernatural about him, but you could shoot him with a shotgun and he's fine. Now, at least with Michael Myers in the new Halloween movie, eventually they're talking about when he kills, he sort of transcends and like becomes more than just a man. It's weird, but they explain it away. But in this movie, he's just Leatherface, who's upset about his mom dying. And he's as strong as John Wick. And that's another thing. He actually digs his chainsaw out of the wall with a sledgehammer like John Wick. I can't make that up. It was like they watched John Wick and they were like, what if Leatherface did that? Just throw it in. Yeah, that's what they did. He digs a chainsaw that's 50 years old out of a wall. It looked cool, but it was stupid. Like, you know what would have been really cool is if somebody had raised him from the dead. I don't know, like a zombified Leatherface. He's already basically a zombie. That would be so cool. But no, instead, he's just the same character 50 years later. No change. It'll be fine. The fans will like it. Get out of here with your thoughts and your ideas. I don't think they will make another Texas Chainsaw that's a continuation of this, but they've made like 11 Texas Chainsaws, so they probably will. And that's my movie review, guys. If you enjoyed this movie review, hit the like button. If you want to share this movie review with your friends, make sure you do that by hitting the share button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure you do that because I got a lot of content coming your way, especially this weekend. It's like my third video this weekend, so yeah. Content. And finally, guys, if you have seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 on Netflix, well, put your thoughts in the comment section down below and let me know what you thought. Maybe you're a horror enthusiast and you're like, no, you know, for what it was great. Or maybe you agree with me where there's just not enough substance and there's just too many plot holes for it to be enjoyable. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So, serious idea here, guys, and I'm just spitballing here with Texas Chainsaw, but what if Leatherface had actually aged out in these movies, and so he was just a really old man, and instead of a chainsaw, he had a suitcase, and like he took a sledgehammer to a wall and like dug his suitcase out, and then he was like, I'm leaving. I don't know. Might have been a better movie.